My name is Allan Kleynhans. Originally of Dutch origin. I grew up in South Africa. I had a very interesting upbringing, as Shay said. I lived next door to a police station for the first 6 years of my life. I was born in 1966. And how many of you have ever been to South Africa? Any South Africans here apart from myself? South African? Yeah. Okay, but you've been to South Africa, right? So you'll know that South Africa was a very different place in 1966. And I lived right next door to Point Road Police Station. And if you lived in Point Road or anywhere around that area and you went all the way down to the end of Point Road, you got to the docks, the harbour mouth. And I would often go down there after the crash that I was going to watch the tankers coming into Durban Harbour, very busy harbour. And but also what I would do is 3 or 4 days out of every 5, I would come back from crash, I would climb on the wall that separated the courtyard that I lived just above from the police courtyard. And I would look into the police yard because I was curious by the noise that I heard there. And I had a very interesting education, as you can imagine, at the age of 4 or 5 years of age, of how human beings should not treat each other. I was very spiritually conscious from a young person, from a young age. And I know this evening we've spoken about consciousness and we've spoken about ego and we've spoken about coming from the heart. And I had a very, very real experience of this from a very young age because I was really aware of the fact that I could feel other people's pain. And when I looked into the police yard and I saw people being beaten, it really upset me. And I had a conversation with my dad at the age of 5, and he explained best he could to a 5-year-old that South Africa was set up the way it was. And I found it very difficult to understand that. And why would people treat each other so meanly? And you know, at the age of 6, I was beaten up by my 2 best friends on the way home from school, and I made a very conscious decision at that moment. I said, you can't trust anybody. And I looked around, and the evidence was very, very clear to me that people didn't like each other and treated each other very meanly. But I was also very conscious about the fact that kindness was very important, and I thought, I'm going to endeavor to be kind. And a long story short, when I was 19, I had no desire to study. In fact, my marks didn't allow me to study because I got an E for enough. I wasn't academically minded. Although I went to 2 private schools, much to my father's dismay, he spent his money on my private education, which I wasted. And you had three options when you were the age of 18 or 19 and you finished school in South Africa. You either went to university if you had the marks, or you went into the army. It was one of those 2. There was a third option. You could declare that you were a pacifist and they would lock you up in prison for the same amount of time. For the same amount of time that you would spend in the army. They would say, right, you can go to the army or we put you in prison for 2 years. Which one do you want to do? And most people went to the army because it was just the thing that you did at that time as a young man. And because my cousins went and my uncle went and my father went, I thought I would go to the army. My dad put me on a train. He said, son, come home alive. Do what you're told, come home alive. So I said, well, it's a bit dramatic, Dad. So he said, just do it. And you know, and then it was in 1987 that I had a significant emotional event in my life where I ended up in Angola for 7 months. And prior to that, I'd been shipped around all over the country and into different parts of Africa, and I was always deployed in different areas where there was unrest, so-called unrest. And in 1987, for the last 7 months of 87, I spent that period of time in Angola. And I wonder if you know what it's like to be locked up in prison. One or two of you sound like you do.
You didn't expect a yes for that, did you?
No. I've been in prison twice, once in this country and once in South Africa, but I was also in a mental prison after that for 9 years. And that was a really, really tough prison. Far tougher than being locked up in a prison, because in this mental prison, I was just like my friend who just spoke before me, spoke about guilt. I came back from Angola and I'd killed hundreds of people. It was a tough thing to live with. You know, before I went to the army, I loved life. You know, even though I had very low self-esteem and I was bullied a lot at school, and it started when I was 6 when my 2 best friends beat me up, and you know, it continued right through my schooling. I used to tell myself all the time that my skin was getting thicker, and that what didn't kill me would toughen me. And then I came back from Angola, and I'd left a lot of friends in Angola who died out there. And although their bodies were brought back, when you're a soldier, one of the toughest things that you do, that you have to deal with, is when you come back, and you deal with guilt. Guilt because you were alive, and somebody else didn't come back, your friends didn't come back, and also guilt because you did things that you're not very proud of. So I really could relate to my friend who spoke before me about locking something up inside and being ashamed of it, and I was very, very ashamed. I was sworn to secrecy, shook the general of the South African Defence Force at that time, General Magnus Malan, shook his hand, got all sorts of badges, and then was told to go home. And no rehabilitation, just like in this country where the Ministry of Defence is locked up. The Ministry of Defence washes their hands of soldiers who come back from the front line, and in this country there's over 8,000 veterans locked up in civilian prisons because they get tried as civilians. They're very finely triggered people. It just takes something very, very small to trigger them off, and they break the law, and then they end up getting tried. This happens all over the world to soldiers, and veterans are just, I don't know if you know this, but veterans, every 46 minutes a veteran commits suicide. Every 46 minutes. That includes on the front line and back here at home in this country, in America, in South Africa, in any other place where veterans have come home from war. And so I was dealing with this, and I thought, wow, what am I going to do about it? And luckily I bumped into a friend of mine, and he introduced me to personal development. He gave me a book to read, Think and Grow Rich, and long story short, the second book I read was Louise Hay, You Can Heal Your Life, and the third book I read was Mind Power by John Keogh. And then I started becoming very, very conscious about, thinking about my thoughts and where my thoughts were going. And I became fascinated about the subject of consciousness and psychology, and I started reading, etc. And then I started to observe what I was thinking about. And a long story short, I live a very, very blessed life. And what I do is I help people to get out of their head. Because we've spoken a lot about the head and the heart tonight. And what the ego does is it separates. The bottom line is the ego separates and the heart connects. And it's about getting out of your head and into your heart. So every single day since that happened, I've actively sought to heal myself in some way. When was it Kimberly, the lady with the bowls? When she came to the back there and she said what she said about the bowls, the very first thing I said to myself is, I wonder what I still have to heal. I wonder what's left still to heal. Now I'm very aware of the fact that there's probably a lot to heal still. But I've made it a practice, a daily practice. And this beautiful lady here stood at the front just now, and she said, you must make it a daily practice. You must do something daily and make yourself a vessel of the universe. And I do the same thing as you every morning for 16 years now. I wake up in the morning, I say, how would you use me today? Direct me, use me, put me wherever I need to be today so that I can serve. Life is about service. When Shay invited me to speak here today, this evening, I was obviously honored because, I love to share my story just because I think that perhaps if it inspires one person to look at their challenges and think, wow, perhaps I don't have it so bad. Perhaps I can stop judging people. Perhaps I can connect with people more deeply on a much deeper level. You always have an opportunity to connect with someone on a deep level. Every single day you meet people in Sainsbury's, Tesco, Asda, Marks and Spencer, on the corner, in the tube, on the bus, in the traffic. And you have an opportunity to connect with that person in that moment. Whether you take it or not is down to whether you are in your head or in your heart. If you're in your head, most people are unconscious about the fact they're in their head, and it takes them about an hour or two to become conscious in the morning. And I like to tell people that you want to become conscious as quickly as you can in the morning. Instantly. As soon as you open your eyes, then you should say something consciously, out loud. So I've been telling people for a long time, and I tell all my clients to do this, and I get them to say this one phrase because they usually say, what shall I say? So I say, well, what would you like to say? And they say, I don't know. So I say, okay, I'll give you my phrase, and then you use it for a while, and after a while your brain will come up with its own phrase, because that's what your brain will do when you inspire it. So I give them my phrase, and my phrase is, good morning, it's great to be alive. Today is my favorite day. Thank you, I'm blessed. And I've been saying that for nearly 17 years now. And that one phrase, it says a lot. Good morning, it's great to be alive. I'm very blessed to be alive. I nearly lost my life several times. Before the army, in the army, and after the army since. And so I'm very aware of the fact that life is a gift. It's a real gift. And we forget that. As we get so caught up in doing things. We're human doings, not human beings anymore. It's about being in the present, being present. When you get into your heart and you connect with another human being, get out of your head, You stop listening to your own voices. And a good way to do that is to ask yourself a simple question. How can I connect with this person right now? It's a very powerful question to ask when you meet a stranger and you connect with that person. Because what we do is we tend to be in judgment. And that's what the ego does. It judges all the time. And we've only been taught how to judge because we grew up with low self-esteem. I've been doing this for a long time now, 15 years nearly, speaking and coaching. I've worked with the Springbok rugby players, I've worked with the Natal Sharks, I've worked with some very, very successful business people who are far more successful than me financially. And all of them, every single one of them, has an issue where their self-esteem is flat, where they've been wounded. Somebody spoke about being wounded earlier. You know, some people have a very toxic wound. It's very, very deep, much deeper than a lot of other people. But all of us have a wound, but that wound lives in the ego. Because when you get into the heart always knows that everything's perfect. There are no accidents on this planet. Everything happens for a reason. I came across a great phrase from Dr. John DeMartini. Who's a fan of John DeMartini here?
Oh, yeah.
He says that nothing is ever in the way, everything is always on the way. And I heard him say that many, many times, and my friend used to tell me that all the time. And then one day it really hit home, and I thought, wow, that is so accurate. Nothing is ever in the way. Everything is always on the way. Because for a long time in my life, I used to ask myself, why me, God? I used to curse God. I went to 2 Catholic schools. I had dogma drummed into my head. And I got to a point in my life, I said, why me, God? Why me? And I hated life. I was suicidal. I was cocaine addict for 5 years. I hated life. I used to think about going to jump under the train at Acton. I'm pointing in that direction because for some reason I think Acton's that way. But I used to think about jumping under the train in Acton when I lived on someone else's couch and I was 65 grand in debt. And by that stage I had a head full of knowledge. I've got a very, very good memory. I learned after school. I've got a photographic memory. So I can read and remember passages and quotes and, you know, and I just had all this knowledge and I was so unhappy still. And it's about getting out of your head and stop judging yourself. So every day, I find some way to heal myself. And I do some meditation, and I read, and I get around people who are feeling great about life. I've been doing that every single day, and I'm aware of the fact that if I'm in my head, I'm judging someone. And usually that comes from my own pain. So if you can remember just a simple thing, I'm going to leave you with one last thing, and then I'm going to end it, because I don't want to keep you here too late, and I know I've already gone over time. Remember, whenever you meet someone from now on, is be present. Someone spoke about being present. That is the biggest gift you can give to another human being, especially if you are a parent with your kids, is to be present. And how do you be present? How do you get out of your head? It's a very, very difficult thing to do, and you've got to work it like a muscle. Because it doesn't happen. You have to do the inner work every single day. It's like going to the gym. It's the best gym you can go to, though, if you just do a little bit every day. A little bit every day. And you can do it with a simple question. So how can I be present right now? How can I really be present? Because that gets you right out of your head and puts your focus on another human being. And when you focus on another human being, you can't judge them. And when you stop judging them, you can only love them. So my message tonight is very simple, is get out of your head as often as you can. Practice, practice, practice. Notice your thoughts when you are with somebody else. If anything hooks you from day to day, you know what I mean by hooks you? If somebody cuts you up in the traffic, or you don't like the way people smell, or you don't like the way people stand too close to you on the train, or you don't like the way somebody dresses in your office, and you have stories that you tell yourself about certain people, you know what I mean? Some people are nodding now. Then stop judging that person in that moment, because you know that it comes from your own pain, and ask yourself, how can I love that person right now? How can I connect with that person? How can I find something in that person that already exists in me? How can I find a similarity between me and that person? Because when you come from the heart, we're all the same. There's only one of us in the room. Neil Donald Walsh says that, right? There's only one of us in the room. It's true. Because spiritually, there's only one. You know, energy, we spoke about it tonight already. Energy connects everyone. We're all connected to the same source. But when you're in your head, then all you see is separation. And we've been so trained to be separated from other people because we're afraid of what they look like, what color they are, how fat they are, how thin they are, how successful they are, how poor they are. And then we forget that actually we're all the same. So that's the greatest gift you can give to someone, is to be present. And how you do that is get out of your head and ask yourself a great question when you're with another human being. How can I connect with this person right now? What can I love about this person? What's great about this person? What's beautiful about this person right now? If you can just do that and practice, 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 and notice your thoughts, you become more and more conscious on a regular basis. And that is the gift of life, is to be conscious. Because when you're conscious, you're awake, you're enlightened, you're present, you're in the moment. Then you have nothing to hide, nothing to fear of anybody else. No judgment. And that's what we really are afraid of, is being judged by other people. That's why we judge them first. Say, let me judge them quickly before they can judge me. So, that's my message in a nutshell. If you want to find out about what I do, by all means, look me up online. My name is Allan Kleynhans, but my website is allanspeaks.com. I do all sorts of speaking and training, coaching. I do a lot of corporate work, and I run workshops, public workshops, and I love working with people, and I love human beings. Somebody asked a question from the front of the room, I can't remember who it is now, but somebody said, who here actually loves everybody? And I put my hand up, because I've got to a place in my life where I do love everybody, because I love myself completely, and I've forgiven myself, and I keep forgiving myself every single day. However, I don't like everybody. Because I don't think you can like everybody. You don't have to like everybody. I know some people in my family, I don't really like them, but I love them. So, but it's true, right? It's true. You can't like everybody. Some people are just not likable, okay? But you can love who they are, because people are not their behavior. And it's always good to remind yourself that everybody has a different model of the world. People are not their behavior. So who you want to love is you want to love who they are at their essence. And at their essence, everybody is love. Marianne Williamson says something very, very powerful. She says, if you're going to be on this planet, you might as well do what you really came to do here, and that is to love other people. And if you're not loving other people 100% all the time, all the way in, you're not living life as you are supposed to live it. You can't love somebody 80%, 70%, 50%, 30%. You can only love them 100%. And if you're not loving them 100%, you're judging them. You're in your head. And how you get out of your head is to say, how can I love this person right now? How can I connect with them? How can I find something in them that resonates? How can I remember who they really are? Because when you remember who they really are, you remember who you really are, and then you really connect. And they'll feel it energetically. And you can do it with strangers even if you walk past them. You don't even have to speak to them. You just look at them and you can send them love. Because it's a powerful gift. Thank you for listening.